The Gardner family loved spending their weekends in nature, far from the noise of the city. This time, they decided to go to a lake that, every winter, was covered by a thick layer of ice. Their home was filled with warmth and coziness, and as they got into the car to head to the lake, a crisp freshness of the upcoming adventure lingered in the air. Little Toby, barely waiting for the car to park, jumped out, leaped onto the thick snow, and froze for a moment as if absorbing the full power of the winter day. The sun shone low on the horizon, casting golden rays onto the ice's reflective surface, and everything around was bathed in a quiet glow. His mother, Laura, stood on the shore, adjusting her scarf around her shoulders, smiling as she watched her son, her gaze filled with both joy and caution. "Toby, don't go too far," she warned. "The ice can be dangerous." The boy, ignoring his mother's words, ran forward, feeling as if the icy surface beneath his feet was inviting him into the unknown. He went farther and farther, laughing, until he reached the middle of the lake. Laura felt a sudden wave of unease. Her heart clenched with anxiety, but she couldn't take her eyes off her son. "Not too far," she called out again, but Toby only waved his arms, shouting something indistinct in excitement. And then, as if in slow motion, the ice beneath his feet cracked. First, there was a faint clicking sound, then a deep vibration spread across the lake. Toby froze, not immediately understanding what had happened. Then the ice gave way, and he disappeared into the water. "Toby!" Laura screamed, her voice losing all strength, turning into a desperate cry. She rushed toward him, but the ice seemed to stretch and break beneath her feet, its cracks widening as if some invisible force was pulling her into the abyss. Dan, Toby's father, jumped up and ran after her. He prayed he would be fast enough, but with each step, the ice became more fragile. They got close enough to see Toby struggling in the freezing water, trying to climb out, but failing. And then, something incredible happened. Out of nowhere, from the forest by the shore, a dog appeared. It was thin, covered in thick but frost-covered fur, and its eyes burned with determination. Without hesitation, the dog leaped into the icy water. Despite the freezing cold and the terror of the moment, it swam toward Toby. The entire scene, filled with tension and desperation, unfolded in mere seconds. Laura and Dan held their breath as they watched the dog battle the freezing water and ice, reaching Toby and gripping his clothes with its teeth. With immense effort, it pulled him onto the ice. Fearless and determined, the dog dragged Toby toward the shore. As soon as Toby reached solid ground, Dan rushed to him, lifting him into his arms. The boy was trembling violently, his face pale, lips turning blue. Without hesitation, Dan carried him toward the car. Laura walked beside them, wrapping her coat around her son, unable to hold back her tears. "Is he okay?" she asked, her voice trembling with fear. Toby, barely conscious, barely moved. The dog, wasting no time, scrambled off the ice and ran to the car. Laura turned in surprise but didn't stop it. The dog jumped inside and started licking Toby's face, trying to bring him back. It was cold, covered in frost, but its love and care were genuine, and that made all the difference. Despite his weakness, Toby felt a strange warmth from the stray dog that had become his savior. The ride home was silent. Dan gripped the steering wheel tightly, his thoughts scattered, filled with regret. "We could have lost him, Laura," he said, unable to hide his guilt. Laura only nodded, but her gaze was fixed not on her husband, but on their son, who was still shivering in the back seat. She wrapped her arms around him, trying to warm him. "I couldn't have stopped him," she whispered. Toby opened his eyes, saw his mother, and quietly said, "Mom, the dog saved me. It just jumped into the water and pulled me out. I don't want it to leave." Laura held back tears. She looked at the dog, which sat there as if sensing the importance of the moment. It was a stray, with no collar, but now it was a hero who had saved their son. Time would prove that its presence was no mere coincidence. When they arrived home, Toby felt the weight of what had happened, realizing how different the outcome could have been. He was grateful, and in his eyes burned a new understanding. Life was entirely at the mercy of chance, but in that uncertainty, there was room not just for fear but for kindness. "We have to keep her," Toby said, looking at the dog, which had settled into a corner. "She saved me. We can't let her go." Diana and Laura exchanged glances, their hearts heavy, but they knew that no fear could outweigh the feeling they had in that moment. The dog had become part of their family, and with that decision came not just gratitude but a lesson that every moment matters, every life is precious, and love should be given freely, just like the dog had done, without conditions. Toby fell asleep in their embrace, and the dog, resting its head quietly on his pillow, stayed by his side like a loyal friend, ready to protect him at any moment. And that day was not just a day of rescue. It was the beginning of a new story of love and life.